Now here's a fascinating item. Dr. Peter Piot, the former head of UNAIDS, in fact from its inception in 1995 right through to the end of 2008, and now the head of the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, Dr. Peter Piot made a speech last week in which he said that we should stop using phrases like the end of AIDS and AIDS is over, and recognize the mountains that have yet to be climbed and the numbers of people who are still dying every day. He's absolutely right. So who's using these phrases? Why, none other than the current head of UNAIDS, Michel Sidibe. Now, Dr. Peter Piot and Michel Sidibe are good friends, or at least I think they're good friends, but it feels as though Peter Piot is giving a not-so-guarded message to Michel Sidibe that he should stop using the Madison Avenue public relations rhetoric of the end of AIDS and AIDS is over and an AIDS-free generation and focus on the tremendous amount of work that has yet to be done. Leave those destructive rhetorical flourishes aside. And now a second interesting item, which is unavoidable in the light of all the international coverage during the last week about the anti-homosexuality legislation in Uganda and the horrific, ominous consequences that may be visited on thousands of gay men and women. The various donors are adjusting to it in a fascinating variety of ways. Norway and Denmark and Holland are beginning to take their aid money and giving it to the NGOs instead of to the government. And there's increasing discussion of targeted sanctions, that is, freezing the bank accounts and freezing the travel of a number of leading figures like Museveni and members of his cabinet. Now, some people say targeted sanctions won't work, wouldn't be applied. But hear this. Within the next week, the Security Council of the United Nations is going to apply targeted sanctions, freezing of assets and freezing of flights against individuals in Yemen who oppose the government. Now, if you can do it in Yemen, why can't you do it in Uganda, and in Nigeria, and in Cameroon, and in Ivory Coast, attempting through that vehicle to change the policies or have them abandoned of those governments? And finally, I have to acknowledge that last week was the 90th birthday of Robert Mugabe. He celebrated it with hundreds of cakes while his population starves. The man, as president of Zimbabwe, is a mass murderer, an orchestrator of rapes, the very persona vibrating crimes against humanity. I can't believe I'm saying this, but may he never reach his 91st. That was last week. I'm Stephen Lewis.